I will be an awesome husband to your daughter.
That's nice and all, but the choices you have made are going to impact my daughter's life immensely.
Exactly. I assume you're going to want children, Laura. How will my grandchildren fit into the mix?
Oh, in a large minivan.
Calvin, I'm sure you're a nice guy, but it's going to take more than love to keep this marriage in the air. Because when you descend back to reality, it will ultimately end in a crash.
All right, House of Payne fans, I praised last night's episode, Season 12, Episode 6, Encouragement. I highly recommend it. I gave that episode a 10 out of 10. If you want a House of Payne episode, no, if you're someone who, I want to be honest here, I've been one of those people for quite a while. Man, this House of Payne reboot ain't nothing. They ain't got nothing on the original series. The vibe is off. This, that, and the third. This episode was one of the few since Season 9 started on BET back in 2019. This was one of the few episodes where I'm like, you know what? This feels like an original episode of House of Payne. And then we get to the point where Laura's parents don't approve of Laura's engagement to Calvin after finding out about his ex-wife, his baby mama, and the fact that he has 2 children. Now, I mentioned this in a video talking about the promotional photos of this episode. I talked about it in my episode review, and I briefly talked about it in my trailer breakdown for next week's episode because the synopsis states that Miranda requests that she and Calvin switch weekends with the boys, Calvin Jr. and Christian. Calvin does it, but he doesn't consider the fact that he and Laura had a whole weekend planned together. Now, one of my favorite lines from Laura's parents in last night's episode was, so he has 2 different children by 2 different women, and Laura, you 2 are going to be married, but I know you want to have kids someday. How are you going to fit in all that? And I thought, you know what? That's a very good point. And the whole dynamic here, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the, Fatima and Zach situation. But really, it reminds me of the game. When Melanie found out about Janae being pregnant with Derwin's child, and as a result, it's one of those situations where Derwin, man, I did not like Melanie in season 3. That was just pure kid. Melanie in season 3 reminded me of Karen in Sister season 3. I just did not like her, but basically, she wanted to be with Derwin, but at the same time wanted to rush a marriage because if I remember correctly, Tasha called her out. You want to get married before Janae has that baby so you can get one up on her just one time. Then they go to that ceremony they put together, and then that's when he's literally in the middle of exchanging vows and gets a phone call that Janae's going into labor, leaving Melanie at the altar, and it's like, damn. But basically, Melanie said, I just want to make sure that there's room on your plate for me too. And I thought about it, and I'm like, look, personally speaking, I don't want a pre-made family. Personally, me, I don't want a pre-made family. I know Marcus Houston, he got dragged for saying that in an interview recently, and I think that's pretty dumb when somebody says my own personal preference. Respect to single parents out there, especially the single mothers, but for me, I don't want a pre-made family. And I value the fact that her parents are looking out. Now, the question is, were Laura's parents too judgmental? If I were a parent, I wouldn't necessarily want my daughter to be involved in a Nick Cannon-like situation where there are multiple baby mamas, multiple kids. My daughter has chosen someone, but she'll never have all of that person. She'll get married, but this man has, like 3 kids or something like that. How do I know you're going to take care of my daughter? I mean, sure, you 2 might have a good relationship now, but when you get married, that's a whole nother, well, not just getting married, but what if she eventually has kids with this guy? I mean, that's going to add a whole nother layer to it. How are you going to take care of my grandkids with all of your attention, but you have 2 other kids running around? So I think their evaluation of the situation was, understandable. Was it a bit harsh to just all of a sudden go, wow, you're a great guy, but then after finding out about his past, what? No, we don't approve. True, but I think honestly the biggest crime here is not meeting the parents earlier, and not to mention not even Laura bringing up the fact that Calvin has, 2 children already. And then vouching for the fact that, look, I know he has these children. I've interacted with them. I have a good relationship with both of them. So we can make it work. I mean, at the end of the day, it is her decision. But now that I really think about it, yeah, it does make sense. The way they would be considering how, I don't know if this is what's best for our daughter. Because, well, it's old-fashioned. That is true. But at the same time, it's not unheard of. I mean, hell, my dad, he had a daughter before he met my mom. And then I think about how back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for men to have, multiple kids by women around the same, how comedians show, like, I think D.L. Hughley talked about, back in the day before the internet and whatnot, men could have a whole nother family across town, but that's because, nobody could look stuff up online. And they didn't know about the other family until the funeral. Like, why he look like daddy? We is real kids. But, I mean, the thing is, I really feel like it just comes down to personal preference, I mean, you want what's best for your children, and you would want them to be married to someone who will be able to give all the love, care, and attention to your child like you would want. But at the same time, it is her decision. And I mean, if she has found Calvin to be a worthy enough man to be her fiance, then by all means. But to be honest here, I said this in the short I posted last night, and I made a meme about this too. I said, Calvin has a whole fiance and has cheated on her 2 times already. The realtor, what's her name, Victoria, and then he had drunk sex with his ex-wife while having a fiance, and this man's still talking about getting married. So say what you want to about Laura's parents being too judgmental over the fact that Calvin has a pre-made family, or families, but how would you feel if they, didn't support the relationship if they had found out that he had cheated on their daughter twice? So who's the real villain here? I don't know. But all I'm saying is, I think that, yeah, you could say that it is too judgmental. Nowadays it is not uncommon, but I don't think it's ever been an uncommon occurrence for blended families to come together. Hell, look at the Brady Bunch. I mean, look at that. I mean, sure, there's a difference between getting married to someone with kids that has the other parent still around. Like, oh yeah, my baby daddy, my baby mama is still around. We just aren't together. Versus, oh, well, my, baby mama, baby daddy, they passed away, and I'm just a single parent. There's a difference there. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think that, her parents, I don't want to judge them too hard, to be honest here, because think of it this way. They are just now meeting Calvin. First impression is going well, but then it falls to crap just as quickly as it came together. So I think it really has more to do with the writing. But then again, you could argue, well, this kind of thing would happen in real life. Absolutely. But it just comes down to personal preference, as I said many times. And to be honest, those who are from blended families, how did your experience go? Did, when you got engaged to someone who already had kids, did you have these conversations with that person's family? Did they accept the fact that you had kids? Or heck, there are blended families where both parties have kids. So there's a, thing to take into consideration there. But I think that Laura's parents were just looking out for their daughter. And if wanting the best for your child makes you a quote unquote bad parent, then I will gladly be a bad parent. But then there is the moments where it's like, if my child is accepting of this person, and I think another thing to consider is, will I judge this person, or let's just say, if I had a daughter, would I judge this man that she chose based on the fact that he already has kids versus him as a person? Like, what were the circumstances surrounding his divorce? What were the circumstances with the first baby mama? How do I know there aren't other kids running around? I think having those discussions are worth having, as opposed to making a quick judgment, a quick call in judgment. That's what I think. So if I were to dot points from Laura's parents, it would be from the fact of just quickly casting aside the relationship, as opposed to, well, Calvin, this night has definitely turned out a bit turbulent, if you will. You know, I had to put in the aviator pun. I think that if the conversation shifted to, okay, tell us about Tracy, tell us about your ex-wife, let us know how that's going to, you know, how that's going and what happened in those relationships that caused them to fizzle out. How do we know the same thing won't happen to our daughter? And then she has kids with you, and then you're on to the next one again. How do we know? Because in that situation, yeah, I wouldn't want my daughter to be a part of that, but it's her choice. But I want to know as a parent. So with that being said, that's my 2 cents on the subject. Good episode. Definitely check it out if you haven't. And I will catch you in the next one.